London has just taken a bold and historic step. The United Kingdom will once again have fighter jets armed with nuclear bombs flying in its skies. After more than 2 decades without this capability, the British government announced the purchase of 12 F-35A fighter jets, a special version, manufactured by the American company Lockheed Martin, with devastating potential. And this is not just a fleet modernization. These planes arrive ready to carry the most advanced tactical nuclear bomb in the American arsenal, the B-61-12. This new acquisition was revealed during the last NATO summit in June and reveals a profound strategic shift. Unlike the F-35B version already in use by the Royal Air Force, the A variant has the specific capacity to carry nuclear weapons. With this, the United Kingdom regains, for the first time since 1998, the capacity to carry out nuclear attacks from the air. The chosen bomb, the B-61-12, is a weapon with adjustable power ranging from 0.3 to 50 kilotons. For comparison, the bomb dropped on Hiroshima had 15 kilotons. In other words, this new bomb can be both more powerful and much more precise and controllable, depending on the scenario in which it is used. But while the fighters will be British and piloted by British pilots, the nuclear warheads will remain under the exclusive control of the United States, in a system known as nuclear sharing, the same system adopted by countries such as Germany, Italy, Belgium, and Turkey. In practice, any use of these weapons requires joint authorization from the US President and the British Prime Minister. Even in critical scenarios, where decision-making time is at a premium, the formal framework remains intact. This underscores the importance of the strategic alliance between Washington and London and the mutual trust that underpins the defense of the West. The F-35A fighters are expected to be deployed at Marham Air Base in Norfolk, but there is also the possibility that the warheads will be stored at Lakenheath Air Base, which still operates as a US Air Force installation. The fact is that, with this move, British soil will once again be home to nuclear weapons after 17 years. Since 2008, when the last devices were removed, the United Kingdom no longer had this type of physical presence on its territory. But why is the UK doing this now? After all, the country already has a powerful nuclear deterrent system with its Vanguard-class submarines, armed with Trident missiles, each carrying dozens of warheads capable of destroying entire cities. The answer is that this submarine arsenal is considered a weapon of last resort, to be used only in the event of an existential attack against the country. What the F-35A brings is something different, a tactical or substrategic deterrent. A rapid and proportionate response to regional threats or limited conflicts, especially in scenarios like the European one, where escalation can happen in a fragmented, rapid, and unpredictable way. The new fleet is expected to cost around £900 million, considering that each F-35A costs between £75 and £80 million. Added to this will be the cost of modernizing the bases and depots to store the warheads, the value of which has not yet been disclosed. The British government, however, guarantees that the measure will have a positive impact on the economy. More than 20,000 jobs should be created, with the participation of more than 100 British suppliers, even if the planes are manufactured in the USA. All of this is a direct reflection of a growing threat looming over Europe: Vladimir Putin's Russia. From the annexation of Crimea to the invasion of Ukraine and the recent nuclear threats, the Kremlin has made clear its intention to challenge the security structures of the West. And for British strategists, this is a race against time. The old policy of containment has been replaced by the urgency of reinforcing defenses, updating arsenals, and increasing rapid response capabilities in a scenario in which war is no longer a distant hypothesis, but a concrete possibility. The UK's decision to reintroduce nuclear warheads into modern fighter jets did not come in a vacuum. It is, first and foremost, a strategic response to Russia's aggressive behavior in recent years. From the 2014 annexation of Crimea to the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the Kremlin has pursued an increasingly belligerent path, marked by direct military action, hybrid operations, and constant threats to the European equilibrium. And among these threats, perhaps the most alarming is the Russian government's increasing normalization of nuclear discourse. Not only has Moscow resumed its heavy investment in modernizing its nuclear arsenal, it has also begun using atomic rhetoric as an instrument of intimidation. A clear example of this was the deployment of tactical nuclear warheads to Belarus, as well as open declarations about the limited use of nuclear weapons in regional conflicts. This change in doctrine, which abandons the Cold War nuclear taboo, has set off alarm bells in all NATO capitals. The problem is that, given this new scenario, the classic deterrent based on intercontinental ballistic missiles, such as the Trident, is beginning to show its limitations. These weapons, although extremely powerful, operate within an all-or-nothing logic. They were designed as a response to a massive nuclear attack, not as flexible instruments for gradual escalation scenarios. And it is precisely into this vacuum that the F-35A fighters with B-61-12 bombs enter. These new bombs not only have adjustable power, but are also designed for tactical use with surgical precision. They can be used in regional war theaters and with controlled consequences. In other words, they offer a proportional, rapid, and deterrent response against Russian actions in NATO territories or areas of strategic interest. What's more, their mobility, when coupled with F-35A fighters, stealthy, fast, and adapted to different scenarios, offers a flexibility that strategic systems cannot achieve. It is no coincidence that this is not an isolated initiative by the United Kingdom. Countries such as Germany, Belgium, Italy, and the Netherlands are already part of NATO's nuclear sharing system, with planes prepared to drop B-61 bombs. What London is doing now is aligning itself once again with this model, which had been abandoned since 1998. It is a conscious and calculated return, driven by the perception that the world is entering a new phase of instability. And this perception is not exaggerated. The United Kingdom has been following Russian movements in the Baltic region with concern. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, NATO members and former Soviet republics, are increasingly at the center of the geopolitical chessboard. Poland also appears as a possible target of political and military pressure. In all these cases, the use of hybrid forces, sabotage, cyber attacks, and even limited military movements are part of the Russian playbook, precisely to test the limits of the Western alliance's response. That is why, according to the British government, this is not a case of Cold War nostalgia, but of existential necessity. For the first time in decades, the United Kingdom is forced to actively prepare for the possibility of direct conflict on European soil. And that means not only strengthening defensive capabilities, but also ensuring that any potential aggressor knows that there will be a response, swift, accurate, and devastating if necessary. The words used by British officials are clear. We must be ready for war to knock on our own door. This phrase is not just a warning. It is a change of mindset, a recognition that today's unstable and fragmented multipolar world demands more than diplomacy and treaties. It demands real preparedness, concrete means, and a firm stance in the face of threats. The return of nuclear-armed air deterrence marks a complete reconfiguration of British defense strategy, and this is reflected not only in military decisions, but also in industrial investment, international alliances, and the government's political discourse. The purchase of the F-35, as valued at around £900 million, is just the tip of the iceberg. This amount covers the acquisition of the aircraft, but it will still require heavy investment in the modernization of air bases, storage systems, nuclear safety equipment, and the entire logistical ecosystem that makes this operation viable. The impact, however, goes beyond the public coffers. According to the British Ministry of Defence, this program is expected to generate more than 20,000 jobs and directly involve more than 100 suppliers within the United Kingdom, strengthening the national defense sector and consolidating British participation in the development of the F-35 as a multinational platform. Although the main manufacturing takes place in the United States, many parts, systems, and technologies are developed by British companies, which strengthens the industrial ties between the two countries and justifies, from a political point of view, the government's effort to promote this investment as something beneficial to the domestic economy. But the real value of this decision lies not in the jobs or the multi-million-dollar contracts, but in the strategic weight it carries. The mere presence of B-61-12 bombs on British soil changes the calculus of any potential aggressor. It is not just a question of possessing nuclear weapons, it is the ability to use them quickly, with tactical precision, in response to limited aggressions, such as partial invasions, hybrid occupations, or even large-scale cyber attacks. What the UK is saying to the world, in no uncertain terms, is that we are ready to respond with force to any threat, even if it comes in disguise or in a gray area. And that kind of message is exactly what British officials believe is needed in light of Russia's new doctrine. Putin has become a master of operating outside the traditional rules of war, perpetuating actions that are always below the threshold of direct military response. This is the so-called gray zone, where the rules are ambiguous, the perpetrators are not always identifiable, and the enemy's hesitation is exploited to its fullest. That is why weapons with rapid and flexible response capabilities, such as the B-61-12, are so important. They are not tied to an all-or-nothing logic, but to a logic of immediate notice. Furthermore, there is a clear attempt to deter not only direct attacks, but also any kind of more subtle geopolitical pressure. The mere thought that a British fighter jet might be carrying a nuclear warhead completely changes the way adversaries calculate their moves. This creates what strategists call strategic uncertainty, a vital element in modern deterrence. The enemy will never know exactly what is being deployed, and that is enough to stymie many offensives before they even begin. This move by the United Kingdom also serves as a symbolic and practical reinforcement of unity within NATO. At a time when the cohesion of the Atlantic Alliance is being questioned, especially with changes of government in the United States and political crises in several European countries, actions like this reaffirm the British commitment to collective defense. What's more, they show that the United Kingdom is willing to bear the costs, risks, and responsibilities of maintaining a credible nuclear deterrent on European soil. Even so, this decision has also generated controversy. Peace organizations and more progressive sectors of British politics have criticized the return of nuclear weapons to the country, arguing that it represents a dangerous and unnecessary escalation. For these groups, the presence of tactical warheads on national soil increases the risk of incidents, provokes additional tensions with Russia, and signals a regression to the logic of confrontation typical of the Cold War. But for the government and the military, this is not a question of provocation, but of preparation. It's the old deterrence dilemma. To ensure peace, you have to be ready for war. And in this new scenario, where asymmetric conflicts, hybrid wars, and tactical nuclear threats are becoming increasingly plausible, simply having submarines with intercontinental missiles is no longer enough. The UK, like other NATO members, understands that it needs to be able to respond to different types of threats with different types of tools. And the F-35A armed with B-61-12S is the right tool for an era of total uncertainty.